The fluorescent lights buzzed overhead, casting an unforgiving glow across the conference room where Emma sat, her hands trembling slightly beneath the polished mahogany table. Across from her, Mr. Thompson leaned back in his chair, his expression unreadable as he delivered the words that would shatter her carefully constructed world. "I've decided to promote Jake," he announced, his voice carrying the weight of finality. The air seemed to thicken around Emma, pressing against her chest as she processed the decision. Jake, her teammate who consistently arrived late, missed deadlines, and spent more time scrolling through social media than working, Jake had been chosen over her. For 3 years, Emma had poured every ounce of her energy into this job. She'd sacrificed weekends, worked late nights, and taken on extra projects without complaint. Her performance reviews had always been stellar, her contributions measurable and impactful. Yet here she was, watching her dreams of advancement slip through her fingers like grains of sand. "But why?" she managed to ask, her voice steadier than she expected. "He's not ready for this level of responsibility." Mr. Thompson shifted uncomfortably in his seat, avoiding her gaze. "It's not just about numbers, Emma. Jake has potential. He connects well with people. Sometimes it's about more than just ticking boxes." His words stung worse than any criticism ever could. Potential? Wasn't dedication supposed to matter? Weren't results what truly counted in the end? Emma felt a hot surge of anger rising in her chest, but she forced herself to remain composed. She couldn't afford to lose control now, not when everything she'd worked for hung precariously in the balance. As the meeting dragged on, each word from Mr. Thompson's mouth felt like another nail in the coffin of her career aspirations. He spoke of team dynamics, of fostering growth, of long-term visions, but none of it made sense to Emma. All she could see was the glaring injustice of it all. When the meeting finally ended, she walked back to her desk in a daze, her mind racing with conflicting emotions. Betrayal, disappointment, anger, and underneath it all, a deep-seated fear that maybe, just maybe, she wasn't good enough after all. Her co-workers greeted her with sympathetic smiles and awkward glances, their eyes filled with unspoken questions. Some offered hollow congratulations for Jake, while others avoided her altogether, sensing the storm brewing within her. Emma wanted to scream, to demand answers, to make them understand how unfair this all was, but instead, she sat down at her desk and stared blankly at her computer screen. The cursor blinked mockingly, waiting for her next move. For the first time in years, she didn't answers. Emma's thoughts spiraled out of control as she replayed the conversation with Mr. Thompson over and over again. Each word felt like salt being rubbed into an open wound. She thought about all the time she had gone above and beyond, staying late to perfect reports, volunteering for challenging projects no one else wanted, mentoring newer employees without expecting anything in return. And yet, despite her relentless effort, Jake, who barely showed up on time or met basic expectations, had been deemed more worthy. The betrayal cut deeper than she cared to admit. Mr. Thompson's vague reasoning about potential and connections felt like excuses rather than explanations. It wasn't just about losing the promotion, it was about feeling invisible. Had her hard work meant nothing? Did loyalty and dedication carry so little weight? The questions gnawed at her, leaving her restless and furious. She clenched her fists under her desk, trying to maintain some semblance of composure, but inside, she was unraveling. By mid-afternoon, the office buzzed with news of Jake's promotion. People congratulated him with forced enthusiasm, patting him on the back as if he'd achieved something monumental. Emma watched from her corner, her jaw tightening every time someone stopped by Jake's desk to celebrate. She hated how easy it seemed for everyone to move on, to accept the decision without question. Didn't they see how wrong this was? Or did they simply not care? Her phone vibrated on her desk, pulling her momentarily out of her spiraling thoughts. It was a text from her best friend, Claire. "How's it going? I heard about Jake. What happened?" Emma hesitated before typing out a response. How could she even begin to explain the mess of emotions swirling inside her? Instead, she sent a simple, "Not now." Claire knew better than to push when Emma was like this, so she replied with a supportive emoji and left it at that. As the hours ticked by, Emma's anger morphed into something darker, a simmering resentment toward the entire system. She started questioning everything, her worth, her choices, her future. Was this really the kind of environment she wanted to invest her life in? An organization that rewarded mediocrity over merit? That valued charm over competence? The more she thought about it, the angrier she became, not just at Mr. Thompson or Jake, but at herself for allowing this place to consume so much of her identity. By the time 5 p.m. rolled around, Emma still hadn't touched her workload. Normally, she would have tackled tasks methodically, ensuring everything was completed to perfection before leaving for the day. But today, she couldn't bring herself to focus. Instead, she packed up her things slowly, deliberately taking longer than usual. As she stood up to leave, Jake approached her with a sheepish grin. "Hey, congrats on everything you've done," he said awkwardly, clearly unsure of how to navigate the situation. Emma forced a tight smile. "Thanks, Jake. Good luck with the new role." Her tone was polite, but there was an edge to her voice that made Jake flinch slightly. He nodded quickly and stepped aside, letting her pass. She walked out of the office without looking back, her heels clicking sharply against the tiled floor. The sound echoed through the hallway, matching the rhythm of her racing heart. On the drive home, Emma's mind wouldn't quiet down. Every red light felt like a personal affront, every slow-moving car ahead of her a reminder of how stuck she felt in her own life. By the time she pulled into her driveway, she was exhausted, not physically, but emotionally drained. She sat in her car for a few minutes, staring at the steering wheel, trying to gather the strength to face the rest of her evening. When she finally walked through the door, her apartment felt suffocatingly small. She dropped her bag on the couch and sank onto the floor, leaning against the wall. Her cat, Luna, padded over and nudged her hand, seeking attention. Emma absently scratched behind Luna's ears, grateful for the distraction. But even the comfort of her pet couldn't fully soothe the storm raging inside her. That night, sleep eluded her. She tossed and turned, replaying every interaction, every word, every moment that had led to this point. She thought about the early mornings, the late nights, the sacrifices she'd made for a company that didn't seem to value her. She thought about her parents, who had always told her that hard work would pay off, that perseverance was the key to success. Wasn't that supposed to be true? Or was it all just a lie? Somewhere between midnight and dawn, a new emotion began to creep in alongside the anger and disappointment: resolve. Emma realized she couldn't keep living like this, trapped in a cycle of giving everything only to receive scraps in return. Something had to change. And though she didn't know exactly what that change would look like yet, one thing was certain: she deserved better. Much better. The next morning, Emma woke up with a clarity she hadn't felt in years. The heaviness in her chest remained, but it was accompanied by a fierce determination to reclaim her power. She brewed a strong cup of coffee and sat down at her kitchen table, opening her laptop. For the first time in weeks, she didn't check her work email. Instead, she created a new document and typed 2 words at the top: resignation letter. At first, the cursor blinked mockingly once again, daring her to take the leap. Writing a resignation letter felt monumental, almost irreversible. But as she began to type, the words flowed naturally, as though they had been waiting patiently inside her for years. She outlined her accomplishments, expressed gratitude for the opportunities she'd been given, and explained her decision to step away from the company. With each sentence, she felt lighter, freer. This wasn't just about leaving a toxic environment, it was about choosing herself. By lunchtime, the draft was complete. Emma read it over several times, tweaking phrases here and there until it felt right. Then she saved the document and closed her laptop, feeling both exhilarated and terrified. She knew sending the letter would be the hardest part, but she also knew she couldn't stay in limbo forever. Taking a deep breath, she opened her email and attached the file. Her finger hovered over the send button for what felt like an eternity. Before she could second-guess herself, she hit send. Immediately, her phone buzzed with an incoming email notification. It was from Mr. Thompson. "Can we talk?" His message was brief, devoid of any context or explanation. Emma stared at the screen, her heart pounding. Part of her wanted to ignore it, to let the letter speak for itself. But another part, the part that still believed in fairness, in closure, knew she owed it to herself to hear him out. She replied curtly, "Sure. When?" "Within minutes," he responded, suggesting a meeting later that afternoon. Emma agreed, knowing full well this conversation might be the most difficult one she'd ever had. Still, she couldn't shake the feeling that something significant was about to happen. As she prepared for the meeting, she reviewed her resignation letter one last time. It was concise, professional, and firm, but it was the final line that carried the most weight. I hope you'll understand that sometimes, choosing the wrong person can teach us more than choosing the right one ever could." With those words echoing in her mind, Emma headed back to the office, ready to face whatever came next. The clock ticked loudly as Emma sat across from Mr. Thompson in the same conference room where her world had been appended just days earlier. The air felt heavier this time, charged with tension neither of them could ignore. Mr. Thompson cleared his throat, his usual confident demeanor replaced by an uneasy stiffness. "Emma," he began, his voice tinged with desperation, "I need to understand why you're doing this. Is it because of the promotion?" Emma crossed her legs, her posture deliberate and controlled. She didn't want to give him the satisfaction of seeing her crack. "It's not just about the promotion," she replied evenly. "It's about everything leading up to it. You chose someone who doesn't share my commitment, my work ethic, or my vision for this company. That says more about your leadership than it does about me." Mr. Thompson leaned forward, his hands clasped tightly together. "I understand how you feel, but you have to trust that I made this decision with the team's best interests in mind. Jake brings something different to the table, something intangible that I believe will benefit us in the long run." Emma raised an eyebrow, her patience wearing thin. "Intangible? Like showing up late and missing deadlines? Because that sounds incredibly valuable." Her sarcasm dripped heavily, and she saw Mr. Thompson flinch. For a moment, she felt guilty for lashing out, but then she reminded herself of all the times she'd swallowed her frustration silently. "No more. Look," Mr. Thompson continued, his tone softening, "I know you're upset, and rightfully so. But walking away now? That's throwing away years of hard work. You're one of our strongest assets, Emma. We need you here." Emma sighed, her fingers drumming lightly on the armrest of her chair. "You say you need me, but your actions tell a different story. Promoting Jake wasn't just a professional blow, it was personal. It made me question whether I belong here at all. And honestly, I don't think I do anymore." Mr. Thompson looked genuinely conflicted, his brow furrowed as he searched for the right words. "What can I do to fix this? Name it. A raise? More responsibilities? Another chance?" Emma shook her head, her resolve unwavering. "It's too late for that. This isn't about money or titles. It's about respect, something I haven't felt in a long time. Your apology doesn't change the fact that I've been undervalued, overlooked, and dismissed. I deserve better than that." The silence that followed was deafening. Mr. Thompson seemed to deflate, his shoulders sagging under the weight of her words. Finally he spoke, his voice barely above a whisper. "If you leave, you'll take a piece of this company with you. Don't underestimate how much you've contributed." Emma nodded, acknowledging the sentiment without letting it sway her. "Thank you for recognizing that. But sometimes, moving on is the only way to grow. I've learned a lot here, about business, about teamwork, and unfortunately, about how some decisions are made. Now it's time for me to apply those lessons elsewhere." Mr. Thompson opened his mouth to respond, but Emma held up a hand, signaling she wasn't finished. "Before we end this conversation, I want to make something clear. I'm not leaving because I'm bitter or defeated. I'm leaving because I refuse to settle for less than I deserve. If that makes you rethink how you lead this team, then maybe my departure will serve a greater purpose." Her words hung in the air, sharp and unyielding. Mr. Thompson stared at her, his expression a mix of admiration and regret. "You're making a mistake," he said finally, though there was no conviction in his voice. "But I won't stand in your way." Emma stood, gathering her belongings with steady hands. "Thank you for that," she said simply. As she turned to leave, she paused at the doorway, glancing back at him one last time. "Oh, and Mr. Thompson? Read the last line of my resignation letter again. Maybe it'll help you understand why this needed to happen." Without waiting for a response, she walked out of the conference room, her footsteps echoing down the hallway. Her heart raced with a mixture of fear and exhilaration, but above all, she felt free. For the first time in years, she was untethered from the expectations and disappointments that had weighed her down. Whatever came next, she knew she was ready to face it head-on. As Emma stepped out of the office building for what she knew would be the last time, the cool evening air brushed against her face, carrying with it a sense of liberation she hadn't felt in years. The weight that had been pressing on her chest for so long seemed to lift, replaced by an unexpected lightness. She walked to her car, her heels clicking confidently against the pavement, and slid into the driver's seat. For a moment, she simply sat there, letting the reality of her decisions sink in. The drive home was different this time. Instead of replaying the injustices of her past, Emma found herself imagining possibilities, new beginnings, fresh starts, and opportunities she'd never allowed herself to consider before. By the time she pulled into her driveway, a small smile tugged at the corners of her lips. This wasn't the end, it was the beginning of something better. That night, as she scrolled through job postings online, Emma received a message from Claire. Her best friend had seen her resignation letter and wanted to check in. "Are you okay?" Claire asked, concern evident in her tone. Emma hesitated for a moment before typing back. "I'm more than okay. I feel free." Claire responded almost instantly. "Good. You deserve to be happy, Em. And honestly, if they can't see how amazing you are, then screw them." Her words made Emma laugh, a genuine full-bodied laugh that echoed through her apartment. It was the first time she'd laughed like that in weeks, maybe even months. She realized then just how much she'd needed someone to remind her of her worth when she'd forgotten it herself. Over the next few days, Emma threw herself into exploring new opportunities. She updated her resume, polished her portfolio, and reached out to former colleagues and mentors for advice. To her surprise, the response was overwhelmingly positive. People who had worked with her in the past praised her dedication, creativity, and leadership skills. One former manager even offered to connect her with a friend who was hiring for a senior position at a rival company. But it wasn't just professional connections that came flooding back. Old friends, acquaintances, and even some distant relatives reached out after hearing about her decision. They shared stories of their own career struggles and encouraged her to keep moving forward. For the first time, Emma felt truly supported, not just by those closest to her, but by an entire network of people who believed in her potential. A week later, Emma attended an interview for a mid-level management role at a startup focused on sustainable technology. From the moment she walked into the office, she could tell it was different from her previous workplace. The atmosphere was vibrant and collaborative, with employees chatting animatedly over coffee or brainstorming ideas on whiteboards scattered throughout the open concept space. During the interview, the CEO listened intently to her answers, asking thoughtful questions that showed he valued her perspective. When she left the building, she felt hopeful, not because she was desperate for the job, but because she genuinely believed she'd found a place where her talents could thrive. 2 days later, the offer came. Not only was the salary significantly higher than what she'd earned before, but the role also included creative freedom and the chance to lead meaningful projects. Emma accepted without hesitation, knowing deep down that this was exactly where she was meant to be. On her first day at the new company, Emma arrived early, eager to dive in. As she settled into her desk, she noticed a handwritten note waiting for her. It was from the CEO. "Welcome to the team, Emma. We're thrilled to have you here. Your passion and expertise are going to make a real difference." Reading those words brought tears to her eyes, not tears of sadness or frustration, but of joy and validation. Over the following months, Emma poured her energy into her new role, quickly earning the trust and admiration of her colleagues. She spearheaded initiatives that aligned with her values, mentored junior employees, and contributed to the company's rapid growth. For the first time in her career, she felt seen, heard, and appreciated. The late nights and early mornings didn't feel like sacrifices anymore, they felt like investments in something worthwhile. One evening, as she wrapped up a particularly productive day, Emma received an email notification on her phone. It was from Mr. Thompson. Curious, she opened it and began to read. "Dear Emma, I've thought a lot about our last conversation, and your resignation letter. At first, I was angry, hurt, even. But as time passed, I realized you were right. Choosing Jake over you wasn't just a mistake, it was a wake-up call. Losing someone of your caliber forced me to reevaluate how I lead and prioritize within this team. I've since implemented changes to ensure decisions like mine don't happen again. While I know it won't undo the damage, I want you to know that your departure has made a lasting impact, not just on me, but on everyone here. Thank you for teaching us what we stood to lose by taking you for granted. Wishing you nothing but success in your new journey. Sincerely, Mr. Thompson." Emma stared at the screen, her heart swelling with a mix of emotions. There was no bitterness left in her, only gratitude. Gratitude for the lessons she'd learned, for the strength she discovered within herself, and for the opportunity to start anew. She closed the email and set her phone aside, leaning back in her chair with a contented sigh. Later that night, as she sat on her couch with Luna curled up beside her, Emma reflected on everything that had happened. She thought about the pain, the anger, and the uncertainty that had once consumed her. But she also thought about the resilience she'd shown, the risks she'd taken, and the life she was now building. For the first time in years, Emma felt truly happy, not because everything had gone perfectly, but because she had chosen to rise above adversity and create her own path. And as she drifted off to sleep that night, one thought lingered in her mind: this is only the beginning.